Welcome to video highlights of the Clinical Care Options Conference Coverage Program. After watching our expert faculty, be sure to access the entire CCO program online at clinicaloptions.com.
This is Kimberly Smith from Chicago, Rush University Medical Center, reporting from the World AIDS meeting in Mexico City, Mexico. So today we saw data on the 96 weeks data from the relpivirine study, or TMC-278, which is a novel NNRTI, which is sort of the next generation NNRTI. This study was one of the phase 2 studies looking at treatment-naive patients, and it compared relpivirine at various doses to efavirenz. And we previously seen the 48-week data that had shown us that they were quite comparable, and this was now the 96-week data that again just showed that they were quite comparable at each of the doses. Ultimately, they ended up moving individuals all to the 25 milligram dose, which is the dose that will go forward for further development. And one of the important things about this drug that we learned in the early development was that it was challenged by the potential for prolonged QT, and they presented a little bit of data about that today, but it was interesting that they pointed out that there was an increased QT interval in each of the TMC-278 arms, but it was also increased in the efavirenz arm too, and so it appears that that's really not going to hold up the development. We heard a little bit about toxicities from the drugs and saw that the CNS toxicity was much more common with efavirenz than it was with the TMC-278, which is reassuring, says that this is going to be a drug that we might be able to avoid that toxicity. And then the other issue, of course, was the lipids, and that turned out that efavirenz had greater increases in lipids than the TMC-278 drug as well. So I think that it was a positive, overall a positive study. And we look forward to the phase 3 data, and now the phase 3 studies are enrolling, and so we look forward to hearing about that in the next year or two. The second study that I think was important this morning was the Merck 004 data, which was a naive study looking at raltegravir, again at various doses initially, but ultimately ending up on the 400 milligram dose, which is now the approved dose, and comparing that to efavirenz in treatment-naive patients. And again, we'd seen the week 48 data that showed us that really they performed quite comparably, and all the way out to week 96, the results are again very similar, with over 80% of individuals having undetectable viral loads at less than 50 at week 96. And so that's important. And you know, the other important thing was the comparison of the side effect profile, and there were really no new side effects that were seen on raltegravir, and the lipid friendliness of this drug turned out to be maintained out to week 96, where you saw much more increase in lipids on efavirenz than you did on raltegravir, which appeared to be pretty lipid neutral. So I think that it was encouraging. There also was a little bit of resistance data that was also encouraging, in that there was one virologic failure on the raltegravir arm that didn't have any mutations, either nucleosides or to the integrase inhibitor. And so I think it, again, is reassuring that now we've got longer-term data in naive patients that shows that this drug is effective and safe. The last point about that study is that there was data on malignancy that was presented, and it showed that there was no higher rate of malignancy in the raltegravir arm than in the efavirenz arm. And again, that's reassuring for a new class of agents. I tell you, it's a BID drug, which is a challenge, but it is so well tolerated that that may be of preference for some individuals going forward. You know, there was a person who stood up in the audience and talked about the challenges that exist with efavirenz, the CNS toxicities, and I think that that's a reality for patients that bothers more patients than we might realize. And so I do think that there is definitely a need for agents that don't have that side effect, and that are, you know, just overall easier for patients to tolerate. And I think raltegravir, as well as relpivirine, rilpivirine may very well end up being two agents that meet that standard. The last study that we'll talk about is what we have been affectionately referring to as the Mexican ACTG 5142 study. This study was designed very similar to the ACTG study in that it compared efavirenz to lopinavir-ritonavir in treatment-naive patients. Much smaller study than the ACTG study, only about 100 patients in each arm, but still an important study because it focused on the tough population. In order to enter the study, you had to have a CD4 cell count that was less than 200, and the median CD4 cell count for folks entering the study was roughly 60 cells. And so this was the difficult-to-treat population, the ones that come in with opportunistic infections and are already ill. And so individuals are randomized, as I mentioned, to efavirenz or lopinavir-ritonavir in combination with either AZT3TC or tenofovir-FTC. The results of the study, though, were very similar to ACTG 5142 in that efavirenz was significantly better than lopinavir-ritonavir in getting people to undetectable by over 15 percentage points. And so, arguably it was superior to lopinavir-ritonavir. And so it again makes the point that the efavirenz is a very effective agent for a population even with low CD4 cell counts, and it argues against the philosophy that some clinicians have had that individuals that have very low CD4 cell counts coming in end up doing better on a boosted protease inhibitor. This certainly counters that, as did ACTG 5142. So I think it was an important study because of that focus. And so I think we've gained, a little bit of information from each of these three studies that I think we'll be able to take into the clinic. One, raltegravir is a drug that's now approved that we might see move into earlier treatment. And rilpivirine, or TMC 278, is a drug that we're looking forward to seeing phase 3 data, and it may be an option for individuals going forward that doesn't have the CNS toxicity. And again, more data showing us that of the currently available agents, if individuals are candidates for efavirenz, it appears to be one of the best options.
Thank you for watching the video highlights from CCO. Remember to access the entire conference coverage program, including expert analyses, capsule summaries, PowerPoints, and more at clinicaloptions.com.